Do you love
automation and artificial intelligence?
Do you live
And breathe digital technology?
Do you have
Business savvy in your DNA? Nikki Gonzalez does, and she's a host of the Creators Lounge.
The Creators Lounge is proud to welcome IACMI.
Welcome back to the Creators Lounge. We are still here Friday morning. I'm your host, Nikki Gonzalez, back for a third interview. It's pretty great to have these marathon sessions in here in the Creators Lounge because the vibe is just so cool and I get to meet so many great people. So Chad Duty, thank you so much for joining me this time. How are you?
Thank you. Doing very well. Thank you for having us here.
Absolutely. So I would love to learn more about IACMI and about yourself. There are so many great initiatives that I found out about this week in this giant community that I just didn't know about before. And I think we have some really interesting things to talk about. So if you don't mind, for our audience, if you could just start by introducing yourself a little bit, and then we can dive into what does IACMI do and your role there.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Chad Duty. I am the CEO of IACMI. I've been there a little over a year and a half, and I came out of the University of Tennessee, where actually I'm still a professor.
All right.
And before that, so I've been there about a decade, and before that I spent about a decade as a researcher at Oak Ridge National Lab working in manufacturing. So
they've got one of the coolest things here.
They've got one of the coolest things here, and it's awesome. And a matter of fact, the great thing about it is my son is actually now carrying on the tradition, and he's working with Oak Ridge on that new innovation.
Oh,
so
no kidding.
That's just,
Yes.
wonderful day. So it's awesome.
I can't wait to bring my kids here.
Yeah,
They're 4 and 6, and every night I talk to them, they're like, "Did you have fun today? Did you see your work friends, Mommy?" They see my excitement for the industry, and they're excited to get a career.
Yeah,
I'm like, you guys are cool. It's okay. Like, enjoy being a kid.
That's right. And I love, so this is part of what I love about manufacturing, right? That childhood excitement of bringing home and showing mom and dad what I made at school today, right? We kind of get that as adults.
We do.
Of getting to say, hey, look what I made. Isn't that cool? And so I think that's just, I don't know, for me especially, and I think for everybody that I'm seeing out here on the floor, there's just that deep part of your soul that is so excited about creating something. So that's
tell
fun.
me what IACMI does.
Yeah, sure. So we do a couple of things. We were founded in 2015 by the Department of Energy, and we're one of those 17 Manufacturing USA institutes.
Okay.
So we're nationwide institutes.
Yeah.
Each one of the institutes focus on a certain technology area. Ours is composites. So we get funding from the Department of Energy to advance the technology in composites and take it really from lab scale of things that are innovative and interesting out into industry. Mm-hmm. And so we do that we have core partners of universities and national labs, but we also have over 150 different industry partners. And those range from the big boys to the small mom and pop shops, and as well as government and academia. So the idea is to innovate on technology and get it out there into industry. And so that's kind of what we do on the technology development side of things. And then obviously you're not going to make new, great, exciting technology if you don't have the workers to do it. Yeah. So the other side of things that we do is really funded a lot by Department of Defense, but also funded by Department of Energy, because both sides feel the need. Mm-hmm. So we're working on workforce development, and so we have some workforce development programs on that as well.
That's a big theme this year, and
it really
we really just see how fundamentally important our manufacturing industry is, not just for our economy, for our everyday lives as consumers, but for our national security, our government. I mean, and that you mentioned ecosystem, and I think that that's one of the biggest things that we, can propel us forward is working together, right? Yeah. Because nobody can do it alone. There's no point in developing some crazy awesome new product or material, more so, if nobody's making products out of it.
Exactly.
So composite materials, can you tell me a little bit more about that if people aren't familiar with what they are?
Yeah, so in this environment, a lot of things that you're seeing machined on the shop floor is aluminum or metals. So we work with composites, and so composites at their fundamental level is really just a certain material that is made up of distinct parts. So at a fundamental level, a chocolate chip cookie is a composite because it's got the cookie side, it's got the chocolate chips, and if you're making them right, you got nuts, right? So, but really what we're interested in are structural composites. Okay. And mostly those are fiber reinforced structural composites. So you're familiar with fiberglass. Yep. And you've probably seen carbon fiber, on the high end, the carbon fiber reinforced materials that you see in golf clubs and tennis rackets and even some of the really fancy cars around here and things like that. Yeah. So those structural composites is what we're working on to get those into commercial products, such as, carbon fiber reinforced composites are lighter, stiffer, they don't corrode. So a lot of the things like we're talking about infrastructure, bridges, things like that, where they're falling down with corrosion, composites don't do that. Obviously with the lightweight strength and stiffness ratio that composites have, we can get them on airplanes and save a ton of money. So really going through the manufacturing innovations to get them out there and make them to where they can be implemented in various different products and impact everyday lives. That's what we're doing on that front.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
So how does that connect with the, we're here in the South Hall. There's machines that machine metal here all day long. Do you machine composites, or are you now replacing them? Like, how the heck do those two connect?
That's absolutely a good question. So you have to machine composites because everything that you're going to make, at the final step, it's going to have to be trimmed, it's going to have to be machined in some way. Yeah. So machining, as these folks know, machining aluminum and steel and things like that, you've got certain parameters that you've got to dial in for each of those materials. Composites are no different. You have to really be specific about how you're machining composites. So we actually have some research projects going on with IACMI and the University of Tennessee in our facilities. How do you machine composites correctly and hit those same specifications that the folks on the metal front are working on? But if you go into any composite shop, you're going to see big hunks of metal around that had to be carefully machined to spec so that you can take that form and form the composite right over it. Yeah. So it's an ecosystem. We can't do one thing without the other.
That's really exciting. Yeah. Well, let's talk more about the ecosystem right after a quick break from our sponsors.
Sure.
Okay, so let's talk about one of my favorite topics, ecosystems, partnerships. We really all need to work together to keep the innovation moving. And we can't do it without each other, and we can't do it without the workforce. Let's talk about it. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so you're right. Ecosystem is where it's at. We can't do anything by ourselves or in a vacuum. So we've got to rely on the strengths that we have out there and look at where the needs and where the resources. So with IACMI, we have our core partners in terms of leading our research. We've got Oak Ridge National Lab, University of Tennessee. Those are in Knoxville, where obviously my background. Yeah. But we're also working with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab. Purdue is doing a lot of our simulation work. We've got the University of Dayton Research Institute, and we have a scale-up research facility in Michigan with Michigan State right now. So really tapping into the nation's best in terms of capabilities, resources, but we're also developing and working with the industrial network, right? Yeah. Those big aerospace companies that are really interested in advancing composites to save money and get higher performance out of their products, but also the small mom and pops, right? They want to work with composites. How do they engage and get that into their products? And one of the wonderful things that we do, and it really happens at our members meetings. So every year we have a members meeting where everybody comes together. And as you know, this is oftentimes a contact sport. Yeah. Getting together, sharing ideas. So the things that we formally do are impactful. The things that we just enable by getting people together across the supply chain, you've got small mom and pop shops talking to the likes of Airbus and trying to figure out, hey, we've got something innovative. How do we get involved in this? And those type of deals that are happening in the hallways and, you know, the break rooms are just outstanding. And so that type of ecosystem is the engine that really makes this work. And so we say that we're the 3 C's of convene, connect, catalyze. So we're bringing everybody together and, you know, it's contact sport, and we're just catalyzing these new relationships, these new projects to really take everybody further.
You know, COVID kind of put a halt to a lot of these in-person things, and we started to do a lot of connecting online, which I think has been wonderful for our industry, right? We're starting to create content. We're starting to have these organic conversations that maybe only happened at trade shows or at community events before, but we all realized that we really, really missed the in-person as well, because a lot of that serendipitous, you know, connections, those dots that get connected, you just can't do that the same way online as you can in person. But I love now we're not backing away from the online. It's just a complementary, right? So IMTS is only every 2 years. Right. What do we do in between, right? So we carry those conversations forward. And from your perspective, I would say especially with those smaller mom and pops, you know, it's not as easy to wrangle as having 3 main partners that you can easily connect with. What kind of ways have you guys found to be conducive to connecting all of these different types of businesses or entities that are in your ecosystem?
Right. And you're right. COVID had a major impact on, you know, that's an understatement, right? And it really prohibited us from getting together and really making business run like it should. But it also forced us to develop some really great online resources. Yeah. And you guys are doing that really in a great way. But it forced us to go online and develop we have a monthly innovation insights to where we feature companies from the large to the small to the academic folks, so that everybody knows what's going on and how to reach people and engage with people. We try to make it as communal as possible, right? And on the workforce development side of things, that has forced us into everybody, all of a sudden, everybody's a stay-at-home, homeschooling mom and dad, right? It's like, oh, gracious, how do we do this? And the schools had to figure out how to do this. As a professor, I had to figure out how to reach my students online. Well, one of our great researchers with IACMI, Tony Schmitz, sat at his kitchen table and developed the ACE curriculum, America's Cutting Edge, and developed online courses that are still being funded and increasingly so through the Department of Defense to introduce kids to CNC machining from the comfort of their couch and their PJs, right? Yeah. And it's all at no cost. Yeah. And so they get exposed to this. It's expose, educate, and inspire, right? Really get the kids aware of what's out there. They can take this online training a few hours and get a little Credly badge that they can put on LinkedIn or something like that to let people know what they've been doing. And then once you finish that, we go in person. Yeah. So you finish that, you can sign up for a 1-week boot camp in person where you're actually doing the CNC machining and making pneumatic engines and things like that. So it's a perfect match between the online and the in-person. And I think those kind of hybrid models is what are really effective right now in a post-COVID world, because the online ability gives you the chance to get into every community. Right,
that's what I was about to say. It breaks down those barriers a bit.
Absolutely.
It opens up not just in your own community or your own geography, but really anybody with the passion that's maybe searching or seeking out something like that, they can find it.
Yeah, and we've got great stories, one after another, of anecdotes of people who have changed their lives and their trajectory in life because they logged on to americascuttingedge.org or metalforamerica.org and got introduced to a new technology that changed the track of their life. And that's where you just I get really excited.
That's what you live for, right?
That's what you live for.
I hear the same thing when people say that something that I said or somebody that I interviewed, their story changed things for them. Yeah. That I think even if nobody saw it except for that one person, it was worth it.
Absolutely.
But the fact that you're impacting probably tons more people.
Right. And that's the great thing about, we're hitting over 10,000 students, participants through that. And the numbers are impressive. But it is about the numbers and getting it out there, but it's about the ones, right?
Yes,
the
those
ones
actual
where you change
lives
their
we're
lives.
changing.
Yeah, and so that's what you go home at night thinking, I did something today. Yeah. That's really cool. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about those programs and specifically what they're doing after another quick break.
Sure.
Welcome to the World According to. Join me, Peter Eelman, and Travis Egan of AMT while we travel across the U.S. and talk with leaders of the manufacturing technology industry. Meet these renowned visionaries in personal, up-close settings. Hear how their passion for manufacturing took root and has continued to fuel the ideas that shape our industry today and tomorrow. Watch now and hear how these leaders answer the question, The World According to, only on IMTS Plus.
So I've heard a couple of program names mentioned, ACE and METAL. Do you want to tell us a bit about what they are?
Yeah, sure. So those are our workforce development kind of leg of IACMI. Now, IACMI also runs internships, and so that's a whole different type of workforce development. I was a co-op student. I did internships, and I was one of the ones that it changed the trajectory of my life, right?
I did too, and it was clear, those that didn't get the opportunity for internship, how they lacked kind of that context for the real world, workforce, employer, just all of those things that you don't really learn in the academic setting.
Right, and it changes your perspective of what the real world is. Also gives you a taste of, I think I want to do this for my career, but let's just go down the buffet line and taste it and see if it's the right place for me, or see if there's a different career path for me. So we have, in the first round of this, we did 100 interns and had 100% placement with those interns. Now, they may not have gotten a job, but they decided to go to grad school. So everybody was successful in that next step. So we're doing that again with IACMI, what we call it 2.0, because we got renewed. And so we've got the internship program going, and we're also helping them develop those soft skills, the how to talk to each other, how to send an email, how to give a presentation, things like that, that sometimes aren't covered in school because they're focused on the technical side. So really happy with our internship program, and that is really reaching out into that 150 plus industry members to really place them there. So that's kind of the internship side of things. We've also got the online and in-person training that we do under ACE and METAL. And I mentioned ACE was CNC machining and critical. Got world-leading experts developing that. But we also have programs in composites. We have a governor's chair, Uday Vaidya at the University of Tennessee, world-renowned expert in composites, that developed an online course that you can take for free. Again,
I might be taking that next time I have spare time.
You really should. It starts off at the very basics of what are composites, and then how do you make them. And so it's a great way to get introduced, and it also has something there for people that are more advanced. It's enough. It starts off at the basic level, but if you already know all that, there's something there that's going to excite you of where composites are going and how they're being used. So we have CNC machining, composites. We also have metrology, which the first thing we have to teach people about that is it's not about the weather. It's not meteorology, it's metrology, it's measuring things. So obviously that's pretty critical. And we're developing programs in cybersecurity and smart manufacturing as well.
Of course.
So kind of hitting, all the bases on that. But then on the metals front, and this was really inspired by the Department of Defense in their need to make submarines. Right? They said they need, over the next decade, just in the field of submarines, they need to hire, I think it was 140,000 people over the next decade. So that's over 10,000 people a year. year.
Wow.
Overall, in manufacturing, by 2030, we have to fill 4 million jobs. And estimates are we're coming up about 2 million short.
Right.
We need people.
We
so
desperately do.
That's one of the things that we're working on with the metal program and this one focuses on castings and forgings.
Okay.
So the big chunks of metal have to be made somehow that these people are machining. So castings and forgings are obviously one of the key aspects of that. And we're engaging, again, voice of experts. We're getting the world's best up at Penn State.
Okay.
We're getting them to develop that curriculum. And once again, it's going to be online and in person, hitting that magic hybrid.
Forging and casting is one of those, again, invisible to me industries up until recently. And it's also incredible to see how that has advanced, right? It's a very old technique, but that has some very cool new technology being applied to it. And, you know, sometimes operating those two lines side by side, right? Because you have a lot of talent that has been doing that for a long time, master forgers, and it's not necessarily attracting a ton of new workforce, right? So we have to be able to bridge that gap somehow. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I'm really looking forward to digging into a lot of the free resources that you've mentioned, training opportunities, and even just for some of us like me, I don't need to know about this for my job. I'm not going to change my career to be a machinist because I love what I do, but I do want to know what everybody in our industry is doing, and I think that's really important for being able to connect the dots. Yeah,
and just in a few nights a week, you're building the terminology and the exposure so that you can talk more effectively with people that are in those industries.
Yeah, so one last call to action. What do you want to make sure to drive home for our audience today? If they caught something interesting here, where should they go? What should they do?
So I'd like to ask folks, if you want to expand your horizons and maybe explore some new technology areas, go to americascuttingedge.org or metalforamerica.org and check out what we have as far as our offerings go.
Thank you so much for joining us in the Creators Lounge today. I hope you have an amazing rest of your Friday. I'm stoked to go out there and make more connections.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. We'll be back in the Creators Lounge after a quick break.